Okay, welcome to this week's video here at Healer Dreamer Astrology. My name's Alan. I'm here with astrologer Martin Comtois.
Alan is an astrologer too.
I'm a student astrologer, yeah, we're going to talk about an upcoming constellation of Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, which is ongoing up until maybe 2030, 2032, around there. So stick around and we'll get into a little overview of those three planets and what this constellation is all about.
My friend Alan called it the Triad of Transformation. I feel that that's a proper name for it. So we're talking about three planets. We're talking about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So these are the furthest planets away from the sun. In astrology, we call them transpersonal planets. The cycles of these planets govern the unfolding of the evolution of our times. There's a great book by Richard Tarnas called Cosmos and Psyche, which details 3,000 years of history, modern history, following the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, but also Jupiter and Saturn and all those cycles. So that's a very fascinating book to read if you're into that. But now we're approaching, so we're in 2022, moving into 2023, and then as we were studying the charts, the current charts, maybe Alan, you can put that Libra new moon chart. So here's Uranus, here's Neptune, and here's Pluto, and those are aligned in a grand kite formation with this next new moon. This is the new moon in Libra at the beginning of fall 2022. If you're catching in this video at a later date, this is a very significant, and the grand kite here activates, most perfectly this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto triangle. And then we've been seeing this, for a few, lunar alignments already. And then we're going to see it through fall. At the end of fall, it's going to move out of orb. And then in 2024, we're going to see it again for about 3 or 4 months. Then in 2025, we're going to see it for about 8 months. And then it will be active within 4 degrees of each other, all the way till 2028, 2029, 2030. And then it's going to start separating an orb. And then we have a very important Saturn-Uranus conjunction that comes in 2032. So this is the beginning of the study of a really long alignments. Now, for those who are familiar with my work, I started speaking when I started my practice. I started in 2008. 2008, what we had is we had the Uranus Pluto square, where Uranus came in the Aries and Pluto came into Capricorn, and we had the economic crash of 2008. And from 2008 to 2020, Uranus and Pluto moved together in square. Now Uranus has sped ahead, and now it's at the end, and it's starting to form a trine to Pluto. So now we have 120 degree. So throughout the teens, we had this tension of Uranus, Pluto, and square. And then throughout my work, I explained, and in some of the videos, if you're really interested in the subject, and this is a deep subject, check out this playlist of the Great Reset, the astrology of the Great Reset. We talk in depth about that Uranus, Pluto, and also Uranus, Neptune. And then Also, we're going to be talking about Pluto, Neptune a lot. So we have three planets, these three outer planets, and we're going to take a deep dive into understanding them, because this is going to be the dominating astrological factor for the next 10 years. Just like the Uranus-Pluto square was dominating for a period of 12 years, now 2022, 2023 on to about 2032, 8 years, maybe 10 years. That's going to be what we're going to be chiefly talking about, and we'll unpack it because there's a lot there. And in this video series, again, the astrology of the Great Reset, we're going to get into it more and more and more.
Yeah, there's so much content that there's going to be a whole bunch of different videos. Trying to break it down into manageable chunks for everybody and for us, because it's so deep. But I know we're going to get into the archetypes in the next video. So if you're interested, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and then you'll get those videos. But before we do, I just wanted to touch on what you said about when you started your astrology, you had Pluto square Uranus.
Yes.
And now we have it trine.
Right.
So we have trine here between these two, Uranus and Pluto, and then we have sextile between for Neptune here.
So that's so 60 degrees between Pluto and Neptune, 120 degrees between Uranus and Pluto, and 60 degrees between Neptune and Uranus.
So what I've learned, and I'd like you to expand on it, is that a trine is the energies kind of work together rather than oppose one another. So the certain energies of Pluto and certain energies of Uranus will combine and sort of magnify or work together, should I say. And then the sextiles is more of an excitement. So the Neptune excites the Uranus and sort of triggers it in some way, and the same with the Neptune and the Pluto. Would you expand on that?
So what Alan is talking about is, in traditional astrology, we describe hard aspects, the conjunction, the square, and the opposition. So that's the 0 degree, the 90 degree, and the 180 degree relationship. We describe them as hard aspects. Hard aspects meaning that they require hard work to integrate and to understand. They're conflicting.
Like tension and...
Yes. Yeah. So that's the hard aspect. Now there's the flowing aspects. Those are 60 and 120. The reason why they're flowing is because they're usually in the same elements with signs that get along. Flowing aspects are great talents, and they bring energy that tend to be easier to integrate. Now, when we speak of outer planetary aspects, that's really fluid, because a square or a opposition or a conjunction, it can be negative or it can be hard, but it can also be very positive. And a trine, sometimes we see that in grand trines. Grand trines is when you have three planets aligned in three 120 degree relationships, so fire, and fire, three planets and fire sign engaged in 120, 120, and 120. That's a grand kite. A grand trine. The problem with a grand trine is that one has the tendency to forget about everything else and to get caught up, and sometimes that can be very negative. So I think we have to be careful when we say, well, that's a great aspect and that's a bad aspect, because it depends on the tenure of the planet. Another thing, whenever we have either good or bad aspects to a planet like Pluto, which represents hell and death and transformation and facing the shadow, all of those Plutonian, whether it's a positive or a negative aspect, you're still facing the reality of death and dying. So, that, you have to notice the archetypal structure. Uranus, in the light way, is the light bringer. It's a positive expression, but in a negative expression, of the quest for freedom is also the sense of feeling trapped. So the shadow of Uranus is feeling trapped. Same thing with Neptune. Neptune is the quest for redemption, and it can be an amazing mirror and a beautiful mystic, but it can also be a drunk in the gutter, you know, and so, you know, or the couch potato, or completely, you know, codependent kind of energy, depending on how it forms in the chart. So yes, that is a really beautiful. When we were preparing, you showed us the grand trine of those three planets in 1767. Well, on the world stage, that's, you know, the brewing. It's the beginning of the American, it's right in the heart of the American Revolution, and it's the brewing of the French Revolution, you know, but they're in a grand trine,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
these three planets are in that
The
trine. Yeah.
same three planets. So that's one of the things we'll explore. Alan is preparing a really cool video of the alignments of these three planets in the last 300 years. We have all kinds of data we'll be showing you in getting to understand these archetypes, archetypes, and also what is it that it's going to bring? Because to me, that's gonna this planetary alignment is gonna set the tone for what is moving towards.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing to mention in this overview video as well is you mentioned the kind of elements that everything's in. So currently we have Earth in Pluto. For Pluto's in Earth, Uranus is in Earth, and Neptune is in air, water.
Yeah, Pisces water.
Yeah, water. And then and they are, during this 10 years, they're actually shifting signs, is that right, into different elements?
Well, that's really what, you know, that what first drew my attention to it is all three of them in the next 2 years are changing in shifts. And in the summer of 2025, you're going to have them all at 1 degree of Aquarius, 1 degree of Aries, and 1 degree of Gemini. And in 2025, the interesting thing also is that Saturn will be in exact conjunction. So we'll have this exact Triad of Transformation with within one, you know, less than 1 degree of exactitude, and adding Saturn to it. So this 1 degree alignment that we're going to see all at 1 degree of Aquarius, Aries, and Gemini, that's going to gradually grow over the next 2 years. So, and then one of the interesting, and we're going to do a video on this too, is first, Pluto coming into Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius will come into Aquarius, and I've never seen this before, but comes into Aquarius, goes back in the, you know, and then with retrograde goes back into Capricorn, comes back into Aquarius, goes back into Capricorn, and then comes back into Aquarius one more time over the next 2 years.
Right.
So Pluto going over that we're going to pay attention to. Now, over the course of the next 2 years, but not as dramatic, I think that in 2025, Neptune comes into Aries, and then Uranus comes into Gemini. So we're all going from feminine signs to masculine signs, all together, kind of in a synchronous dance. The outer planet are going from feminine to masculine energy. You know, and then
so a feminine earth, feminine water into masculine air and fire.
Exactly.
Right.
And so then we're gonna, in the course of these studies, we're gonna look at what it was like when Pluto was in Aquarius the last time, when Neptune was in Aries the last time, where Uranus was in Gemini the last time, and then we're going to look at a series of alignments together. Then we'll also go into depth into each of the archetypal structure. what is Pluto about? What is Neptune about? What is Uranus about? So that's going to be a very detailed, for those who are intermediate in their studies of astrology, you'll find this video series to be very important in your studies, both in your studies as an astrologer, but also in understanding the WTF factor. What is going on?
What
What is
is it all
this?
about?
Hmm.
Hmm.
And maybe we can talk about that a little bit. What do you feel that this is about in your own
Oh
process?
man, it just, I mean, mentioned this to you the other day. It just feels like, because these planets are all sort of transpersonal, so it's more around the collective, but it's how they are in each person as well, right? So it's not just about everybody else, it's about that, how the person fits into that collective and how that aspect of yourself is represented. But it feels like a societal shift, like a new way of doing things, something being reborn in the way the individual contributes to the whole, and how that's going to change. That's what I feel.
Yes, yes. So I've been, and I fully agree with you. There's something like that, but there's also, I think, in terms of a deep philosophy of life,
Yeah,
that these
yeah.
planets govern the philosophy of life, almost a renewal in how we engage with spirituality.
Yes, totally,
So,
totally.
so economic, social, but also spiritual and
Mm-hmm.
moral and cultural and creative.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's the beauty about Cosmos and Psyche. And I know you haven't read that book yet,
No, yeah.
but you're going to enjoy that so much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because it talks about the effect of these planets on all of these things. So creatively, it is almost as if we are engaging with creating the new reality
Mm-hmm.
through the lens of these archetypal structure,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that we're at a pivotal time in history.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard Tarnas points out, when Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus were in triple conjunction, and in the 500, 600 before Christ, and how on the planet at the same time was Confucius, Pythagoras, and Buddha, and how they, that was such a profound start. And then we
Mm-hmm.
looked at that trine, and also we looked at, then we have to unpack a lot, right? Because when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about these three planets, we're talking about the relationship of Uranus with Pluto, but also Uranus with Neptune. We went through a Uranus
Mm-hmm.
Neptune conjunction in the 90s, but also the Pluto Neptune. We had a Pluto Neptune conjunction in 1891. So these cycles, we're going to flesh that out. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to study it, and
do,
fascinating
do you
stuff.
do you feel, I mean, I had a thought the other day about just with the monarchy, right, and with what recently happened with the queen and this moving into the king. Interestingly, these are moving from feminine to masculine signs, but um it
Interesting.
yeah,
Going from feminine to masculine.
yeah.
Good one.
And
Good
then,
one.
and Pluto being like the soul and fate and kind of like a destiny of some sort,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but then also belief, like belief systems, right? That whatever you think of the monarchy, whether you're support or against, um, they are there because of a belief system, right? That's just because they believe in that, that's happening. And I just don't know if there's a shift of, there could be a shift of beliefs, or maybe we need to look at that, you know?
Well, that's huge to
Oh yeah,
unpack, and I
yeah.
I wanted to do a video of Prince Charles' chart with you, and also maybe the Queen, and to look
Mm-hmm.
at her, her death from the archetypal perspective. But I think that you got something. If anything, the monarchy is the symbol, the most important symbol of what we call colonize,
Yeah,
the colonization mode.
yeah. And
what
it's very intertwined with Christianity as well, and you know,
well, pre-Christianity, you know, if you
yeah,
think about what Christ was born in, Christ was born in, the beginning of the peak of the Roman Empire.
hmm,
So he was confronted with colonialism, and we look at the Greeks and the Romans as the first examples of culture, modern culture. Well, they were very, very colonial as well.
yes, yeah,
So it's not just Christianity, the
right,
colonialism spirit. So the king and the queen are symbols of that.
yeah, it's tied to a religion of some sort.
And looking at his chart, he's got some very interesting alignment where he could be seen as a leader who could engage with this path of reconciliation, much like the Pope did. I think that our establishment, and if anyone has a burden to bear in terms of this colonial spirit, I think the British, you know I think that the British are struggling with that,
Hmm,
and that's
hmm,
done for a while, and so there's a lot of things, and I think that the gift of King Charles may just be King Charles III, that he stirs public opinion towards an emancipation of the role of colonialism to be a more benign structure
hmm,
instead of such an abusive structure. But
yeah,
yeah, I think that falls really in line with what you're talking about for
hmm,
sure.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
It,
stay
it
tuned for a video on Prince Charles or King Charles.
It would be very interesting to see how these three planets in transit fall onto his chart. So
Yes.
we could study his chart,
Hmm.
then we can study the Triad of
Cool.
Transformation
Hmm.
and what it does to his chart.
Yeah.
And that would
Yeah.
be fascinating as well. So we could tie into both of them.
Yeah. Huge studies here with us. It's crazy.
Well, all
It's
summer
good.
long, astrologically, the focus for us has been, this Uranus Pluto and this great crisis. We
Hmm.
had the Uranus Pluto square, we had Jupiter and Uranus and Saturn conjoining Pluto, squaring Uranus. We still, as of right now, we have the square of Saturn to Uranus, you know, but now the energies are shifting.
Hmm.
And all summer long I was asking myself, okay, what's next? Now what?
Hmm.
And then so this particular alignment is the now what,
Hmm.
and that's going to be fascinating, and we'll be talking lots about it.
So if this topic is interesting you, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be more, as we've said. As time goes along, you'll probably find some links in the bottom of this video to all the different topics.
And thank you, Alan,
Yeah, man.
MC Starman.
No worries.
We'll see you next time.
Take care, folks. Bye.